not a normal one, it's Taskmaster mode, and welcome back to Taskmaster mode, the podcast. Woohoo! We're back for the third time in about 3 weeks. Woohoo! That means I'm on a roll with getting these famous people involved. So, in the last episode, we had Guy Williams talking about Taskmaster New Zealand, and now this channel is expanding once more. Obviously, we mentioned it previously because we did the breakdown of the Taskmaster and the assistants. We did 2 videos on who they were to give everyone the chance to get in the mind of these wonderful comedians. But I am indeed talking about Taskmaster Australia, the highly successful version that E4 needs to start airing because it's no longer available on YouTube. So, with interview-wise, if you're watching this on the 13th of June, and you're watching this approximately like 1 p.m. or whenever this is uploaded, then you should see on the main channel an interview I did with James Mallow, which was part of a Doctor Who documentary, John Comment, the man who was Doctor Who, about him working with John Pertwee. So go watch that after this, because this is an amazing interview. I know it's not began yet, but I already know it's going to be amazing because I'm amazing. So, anyway, we'll crack on. My guest today is best known as the Taskmaster Assistant of Australia. It's the one, it's the only, but there's two of us. We've both got the same name. It's Tom Cashman!
G'day, how's it going?
It's all right. So, we'll start at the very beginning, because Julie Andrews always says, I don't know why she's always saying it, because it's a very good place to start. How did you get into this industry we called funny ha-ha comedy?
Is that what you call it? Funny ha-ha comedy? Yeah. That's a big coincidence because that is precisely what I call it also. How did I get into it? I was not too dissimilar to yourself, I suppose, not to presume too much about you, having just met you, but a teenager who was a big fan of stand-up. I think my dad was a big fan of stand-up, and so took me to shows quite often, and at home would watch comedy a lot, and I'd see him giggling away. So it made me curious about what was going on. And then when I was 19, I was I went to uni at Sydney Uni in Australia, and basically met for the first time other people that were interested in the same thing, and told me how to start doing open mics and stuff. And then once you do a few of those, you're off and away.
Yeah. And did you enjoy doing the open mic circuit?
Enjoy probably wouldn't be the word I would use. It can be a rough slog. When I started as well, it wasn't kind of I suppose it wasn't as brimming with talent as it is today. I would say it was a smaller scene in Sydney where I started, which could be quite dire at times. Not many people at shows. Pretty difficult to get on at the few shows that there were. A bit of a negative attitude, I think some of the people had. I was very young. But then, yeah, as time went on, more people my age got involved, and it became a lot of fun. And, you know, where I met a lot of the friends that I have now and stuff. So overall positive, definitely.
And so when you do these open mics, did you write down your material, or did you do the Billy Connolly and walk on and just start spewing out nonsense?
Wow, that's a big swipe at Connolly there. I wrote down a word to kind of remind me of the joke. Pretty much every spot I've ever done. At least I either have like a set list in my head or on my phone, and I did that from the beginning. But yeah, I wouldn't write things out word for word. I'd kind of rehearse it in my head, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then kind of do it word for word in my head. And then once you're out there, you know that you've kind of already practiced once, and often it would come out kind of similar words.
And do you think practicing helped with your confidence when you went on the stage to perform it?
I think it did, definitely, because you kind of know the main thing that makes me anxious about performing comedy is forgetting what's next. I'll sometimes have dreams where I'm on at a show. I don't know where I am. I don't know what the show is, but I can hear the crowd out there and I'm on next, and I can't remember anything. I can't remember any jokes. And so that kind of terrifies me. So I think going through it does help with that. Except one time, because what I used to do is I'd walk up and down near the comedy venue, kind of just saying to myself what I'm going to say in a few minutes. But the trouble with that is you look crazy because you're pacing up and down a public street speaking to yourself. So what I would do is I would hold a phone up to my face and pretend I'm on the phone and then just say the jokes. But the problem with that method was one time I touched my face up against my phone and accidentally called a girl that I knew who I hadn't spoken to for years, and it went to her voicemail, but thankfully. But then I left a message, which was like 2 minutes or whatever the maximum amount of time you can spend on messages. Just me saying, just doing my jokes. And she texted me later being like, are you okay? Like, why are you? It was a very strange message to receive, and I had to explain, obviously. But yeah, that's the one time it's gone wrong, but generally a good strategy for preparation.
And so when you moved to TV, did that sort of like make you fear of forgetting things less of a fear because of the auto cue and all the other technical stuff to remember the stuff you need to say?
It's interesting. I think so. The first TV stuff I did, there was an auto cue for like the host or something, but there's no auto cue for you. But I think actually the lack of preparation that you can do for panel shows like that actually helps, because I'm not going in with a script. I've just got to go in and have fun and try and be funny. So then that kind of worrying about memory, you can't worry about it because you're not worried. You're not trying to remember anything. I suppose the other thing I'd say as well is with most of those shows, you're aware that if you really screw up, they'll just edit that out because it's not live. So that's a comfort. Whereas live stand-up, if you screw up and say the wrong thing, you can't be like, oh, stop, everyone, we're just going to go back in time and pretend that never happened. You're accountable for everything that comes out of your mouth. Yeah. So, yeah, the memory stuff's not so much of an issue with TV stuff, thankfully.
And then how did you get involved in Taskmaster Australia?
Well, it originally happened, I suppose, I just got an offer to do it. I didn't, there wasn't like an interview process or like an application process or anything. So I just got a very exciting call one day about maybe, when was it? About a year ago today. I reckon around this time last year. Yeah.
And had you seen did you recognize the brand Taskmaster?
Big time. I recognize the brand Taskmaster. I'd seen, I reckon, like 2 seasons of the UK version, and lots and lots and lots of clips, because I think when you're a comedian, you often follow a lot of your friends or acquaintances or, professional allies that you encounter along your way. And, people post clips about it all the time. So I think, yeah, I'd been very aware of it. And it had been kind of funny as well, because when you're talking to other... it had amused me when I first heard of it, because I suppose 20 years ago or something, when I was your age and I was a big comedy fan, when I listened to podcasts where comedians would talk about, what their goals were, it was all about like a Comedy Central special or an HBO special. These were the things that would kind of, take you forward in your career. And it made me laugh that around, 2016, whenever Taskmaster started, slowly in the UK, when you spoke to UK comedians, their goals stopped being doing a Netflix special or something, and it started being, I want to go on a show where you balance an egg on your head and try to pull a funny face at the same time. And that was my first introduction to it. It's like, what show are these people talking about? It sounds insane.
Yeah, because what it was from my knowledge, a lot of people were saying that Live at the Apollo was there. Is if you're on it, you've made it, which is sort of still the case. But what it told me, because Taskmaster went from Dave, which was a niche channel that Mock the Week took the mickey out of because it used to repeat the same episode like 4 times, and then it moved to Channel 4. It's become that thing that everyone wants to do. And so, do you reckon that like people want to do it? Do you reckon that's going to start becoming a thing in Australia now that you've filmed the second series? Do you reckon it's starting to become the hierarchy of the comedy industry in Australia?
Well, I think, yeah, not so much the hierarchy. I think it's still very much early days compared to the UK. But I think already we've seen a bit of a shift since season 1. I reckon I was told, I think more people were keen on doing season 2 than season 1. because they've seen it work now, and they've seen kind of what it is, and I hope so, because I really do like the format for that reason. As a fan of good comedy, I love to see people kind of get an opportunity to kind of show what their style is, and I think Taskmaster is such a great format for allowing people to show why they're funny, because it puts people in these kind of high pressure situations. All the kind of veneer goes off, all the kind of artifice has to be dropped, and all of a sudden you're just kind of who you are, your authentic self, as you struggle for 8 minutes to try to do this silly task. So I think it is a good vehicle for people to find out about new acts.
Yeah, and so around the world, each version of Taskmaster, the assistants usually, and not always, are usually semi-involved in places. Were you involved, like a Paul Williams type thing? Were you involved in helping writing the tasks, not solely writing them because Sam Smith was involved, but did you write some of them?
So in season 1, I was brought on the casting of it. It all happened quite quickly. So yeah, I wasn't that involved in the writing of it. I think I came up with one idea, and that was included. And then you're involved in on the day or like in the week leading up, like making small tweaks and stuff. But yeah, pretty much not involved in the writing really of season 1. But for season 2, I have been more involved, working with Sam Smith, as you say, and the director and the producers and stuff. Like there's a lot of people working on it, but it's been a lot of fun leading up to season 2 to be involved in that process.
Yeah, and so the one thing that's different about this version to every other version has a house that's in their country that it's based in. How come the Australian version borrowed the I say borrow because it is a borrow, because you can hire out the New Zealand house, but how come the Australian version used the New Zealand house? Is there not like a similar mansion in Australia?
Well, I'm sure there's lots of houses in Australia. I suppose I don't know the answer to that question really, because I'm not the person who makes that decision. But I'd imagine it's because the production company that makes the New Zealand version is the same production company that is making the Australian one, which I am a big fan of, because they have a bunch of experience making it and making a good adaptation of the original. And so I imagine it's because those people that are used to doing it are used to doing it in that house and are from New Zealand. I quite like going over there and kind of like, because I'm there for like 5 weeks or something, both times. But it's fun to be kind of away from home and just focusing on a project. So yeah, I've quite enjoyed it being over there.
And so do you feel more confident that the show's going to be successful because there's a team that have already had success with their own version?
Yeah, I think that looking back, that was a huge comfort, because I think particularly at the beginning, you walk on, it's day 1, there's a bunch of cameras ready to film you. You're like, basically, in your heart of hearts, you're like, God, I hope this isn't. Because if it's like a lot of things in life, you can just pretend they never happened, but people are filming this. So I really hope it's not terrible. And I suppose if it was all a bunch of people feeling how I felt of just like, oh, it's all new to me, you would, I suppose the likelihood of it being be higher, basically. So I definitely got the sense in that first week of working on it that other people, they know what they're doing. They're like, okay, we're going over here. And then they're just the way that everyone's talking, there's a calmness which comes with experience, along with a lot of specific help that people gave. That was, definitely made me feel good.
And so with the mainly talking on the first series, because obviously the second series hasn't aired yet, so you can't really say anything much about it. Or we'll find out later if you can. What's your favorite task from the first series that you did, but then never actually cut, was like good enough to make it to air?
Well, there's a few that I can remember, but the one that stands out to me, which I think I mentioned on the People's Podcast, was another one that I came up with, which was a stitch up task, where basically I forget the exact wording of the task, but it was for Luke McGregor only, and I think he had like 7 minutes or something like that, and the task was to tickle me. And so he had to, and then immediately after he read that out, when he said, your time starts now, I ran away. And so he started chasing me. So he's got to tickle me for as long as possible out of the 7 minutes or something like that, right? Maybe it was 13 minutes. And so I had, or we had, but I ran outside and we'd put that, that night that's out the front or the back of the house. We'd place that like on the ground as if it had been like knocked over by the wind. And then I was outside, but Luke wasn't outside yet. I yelped as if I'd tripped over and went, oh God, and then fell. And then we had also a bit of carpet, like a circular bit of carpet set up just after that, like a kind of a plush carpet where I, like a rug where I lay on that. So it was all kind of it was meant to look obviously deliberately set up.
Yeah.
Obviously this isn't an accident, but he kind of did then fall for it, but then was very uncomfortable tickling me. So then I think sat down on a seat and poked me with an oar and tried to tickle me there. So I'm just like writhing around on this rug. Giggle. I was laughing so much, in part because I'm quite ticklish, and in part because, I know that he is the only person who has to do this, and he genuinely found it very strange and was a bit uncomfortable the whole time, which made me laugh as well. So that was a lot of fun to shoot. I think watching it later, it was potentially a bit too unhinged, but yeah, that's definitely the one that jumps out to me as being my favorite one that didn't get away.
Yeah. And so with the when Alex Arnold has mentioned several times in several different contexts, I've never mentioned it in a full sense, that he's in. So WhatsApp. He mentioned two names with which
yes,
Richard Sundin and Paul Williams in a WhatsApp chat with. Are you in a WhatsApp group chat with any other assistant from any other version? If you're allowed to say.
Wow. So I mean, this is a pretty brutal way to find out you're not in a WhatsApp group. But yeah, no, I'm not in a WhatsApp group with anyone. I suppose so I'm friends with Paul Williams from we have done comedy together for years before Taskmaster. So I suppose there's a chat where it's just me and him, but I suppose that doesn't really count as I think for it to become a group chat, I think it needs to be 3+ people. So the answer to your question formally is no, unfortunately. But,
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows what happens in the future?
And hopefully this version becomes even more successful so that you get invited to the next gathering.
That's it.
I don't know if you know about the gathering they did in the beach with them, not all of them, because some of the Taskmasters didn't want to go because their versions failed. Reggie Watts. And whatever the Spanish woman's called, because I can't remember her name, they didn't turn up. And then so they had this massive gathering. So do you hope to go to one of Taskmaster gathering one day?
So basically what you're asking me now is last year a group of people were flown to Europe, paid for by other people, where they had a holiday. Do you hope that something like that happens to you in the future? Yeah. Yes. That's a yes from me.
Because there's a program out there that people want to be made called Taskmaster Assistants of Assistants, or the assistants are the contestants, and Greg and Alex judge the assistants.
Wow.
So do you reckon you would be good at competing?
I mean, I'd love to do that. I'd love to find out, but I suspect the answer would be that I'm bad. I'm quite competitive. And I think when I'm watching specifically the people, I shouldn't say the people, the contestants, when I'm seeing them do I think particularly the kind of the objective tasks, which are like, throw a thing in there, like there's, an objective answer. I think with the subjective ones, when it's up to people's creativity, what they do, I'm not often thinking about what I'd do because, what they do is so just them that it's kind of irrelevant what I do. But when it's like, throw this in there and they've failed 10 times, I'm thinking I'd be able to do that. Come on, give me a go. It's very difficult being there without getting to have a go. But yeah, so for that reason, I think I'd like to have a go. But I think people that watch the show really underestimate how much pressure there is on the contestants, because they truly like I think we at least do a great job, I think, of keeping the reality of their experience, like basically true to how it appears on screen. Like they don't know what they're walking into, and there's cameras pointed at them, and they've got like 10 minutes to think of something to solve this task, and they're trying to kind of be themselves. It's pretty terrifying stuff. So I feel like part of me wants to do it, but part of me likes being on my side where I just get to laugh at them as they fail.
Yeah. And so one of the key things that I love to learn about is the how the how like channels work in Australia. Why is there so many advert breaks? Because in in like the UK version, we don't normally have an advert break before once you finish the live task. So how come there's so many advert breaks?
Also, is there one more at the end?
Well, in your version, it goes.
Yeah.
You have the live task, then he sends it to a break, and then he gives the results. We only have
Yes.
we have him in chunks. So you do it in parts because it's when you appear seven more times than you do in the advert break bits. We've got
Yes.
less breaks, so we have
Gotcha.
more in it.
Yeah. I think so. I don't know the answer as to why. I think that's normal in Australia, the way that it is. So I think that's probably just I suppose, ultimately a question about the negotiations between British versus Australian commercial TV networks with various advertisers in the relevant jurisdictions, which I can't really speak to. But I think it's not a Taskmaster specific thing, but we have that ad break at the end. It's I think all shows that are an hour. This is my understanding. I could be wrong, but I've assumed. I think I would have heard if there was a Taskmaster specific ad break. I think it's just how we do it over here. You got to squeeze them in somewhere.
And so when you go see break, would you say that you would say that they're in parts, or would you say they're just in small sections? Because in every other video you say, "Oh, we're in part 2 or part 3." Would you say that the bits you film where you have to, like, say for instance, part 3, there's 3 of you, or you're holding 3 balloons? Would you say that they're the parts, or would you say that they're just like a continuation to swap it back to the program from the adverts?
As in, like, would I refer to like the third segment as being part 3, like while we're filming it, or just in general?
Because it's when they do it in the UK, Greg goes, "Oh, that's the end of part 1." Not every program
Yes.
has, is it? And then Alex is like 1, and then he comes back, and there's 2 of them. So you're
Yes.
in episode 1, there's like a bit where there's like 4 or 5 of you. Would you say they're the section you film for the different parts of the program, or would you say that they're just a bit just so you have a reference to where you're going back to?
I think they serve both purposes. But yeah, we do the ones where I think some of them are numerical and some of them aren't.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right to say that, or to imply, which you have, whether you like it or not, that our version puts less emphasis on the number of the part of each segment, because some of those interstitial bits before the outbreaker and after specifically have numbers in them, and some don't. And I make no apologies for that.
And so, on that note, we move on to talk about Taskmaster Australia, Series 1, Episode 1. Do, 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 do. Wow, wow. Do, 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 do. And so, we now on to Taskmaster Australia, Series 1, Episode 1. The first episode in this version. We also going to reference the original with Tom, the leader, our superior, Tom, which I'll get onto in a second, who tells everyone that people are going to complain that it's not as good as the original. But I don't know. Have people complained that it's not as good as the original?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I tried not to be too in the weeds of looking at the feedback, but inevitably you get a lot of feedback from people. And I think it's just another strength of the format that it kind of is transferable over to new people. And I think yeah, I suppose there's different categories of people. The people that watch the UK, so there's people that have never seen the UK one that are watching the Australian one for the first time. And so I suppose those people are never going to say it's nothing like the original because they haven't seen the original. And then there's people who have, and I think, yeah, my assessment would be that those people often have a lot of affection for the format and for Taskmaster. So, and are kind of excited about their country having a version.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was the vibe I got. However, generally speaking, people are less likely to say negative stuff to your face than positive stuff. So who knows? There's probably a few people that think that, but yeah, less than I was expecting. So it was.
And so earlier this year, I interviewed Daniela Walker. I actually interviewed her a few days before this episode came out.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I know. It was quite surprising. And so she had said that she had called you and other Tom, Big Tom, Little Tom, because obviously Tom Gleeson, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, is taller than you and me collectively. Would you say he's taller than I don't know if you know Richard Osmond, but would you say he's taller than Richard Osmond?
No, hang on. Isn't this something we could Google?
Yeah. Well, Richard, I don't know. I don't know if he weighs.
Richard Osman seems huge to me.
Yeah, he is. Richard
2
Osmond.
meters. And then Tom Gleeson height 1.9, 10. Tom Gleeson is 10 centimeters shorter than Richard Osman. But I should clarify, because I just Googled someone's height. There is an Irish hurler, someone who does the sport of hurling, which I'm not really that familiar with what it is in Ireland, who has the same name as me, Tom Cashman. And when you Google my name at the moment, I don't know if it's the same for you, but basically the information about that hurler has been conflated with the information about me, and it says that my height is 5'8", which is not true. I'm taller than that. And so sometimes when you Google heights, you don't get the correct information. Just wanted to clarify that.
And so we start off with the prize task, which is
Yes.
you always, with a prize task at the very beginning, you always want to start less complicated. So as in like the text and the wording of it can have a like broader meaning, but it's like short, because in the new series in the UK one, it's like bringing the most interesting thing that's smaller than an elephant but taller than a giraffe, that has a diameter of an eagle eating a badger. Like that's like,
Yes.
but that's a very not even an
It's a good example.
Yeah. So we had the most. I say we. I mean, in this episode, they had the most beautiful thing, which is very subjective because everyone finds different things beautiful. I might find an egg that's got a wig put on it beautiful, and someone else might find it hideous. And so
beauty is in the eye of the guy that looks. Yeah. That's what I say.
And so if you were given this prize task, what would you have brought in?
My goodness gracious. I think I would try and keep it simple, because I think part of why we, not that it was my decision, but I think we wanted to keep things relatively simple in this first episode, thinking of people in that first category that I mentioned earlier, that like Australians who hadn't seen the UK version or the New Zealand version or anything before, so I kind of don't know what the show is. We needed the prize task and some of the other tasks as well to be pretty clear cut, like it's pretty clear what's going on. Yeah. And so I think on that, with that same logic, I'd bring in something pretty simple myself. I think my instinct, just off the top of my head, would be to lean into Tom Gleeson being beautiful, to suck up to the Taskmaster ahead of time. Perhaps maybe like a trophy that is similar to the trophy of the Taskmaster's head. Yeah. I think if I could get a replica of that made, then that would kind of, I suppose, make it clear to people that this is what I want. This is the most beautiful thing to me, and I'm going to spend the season trying to get it.
And what I would do, because having thought about it, because you want to try and get the most points, and you want to make Tom love you, I would in the hard quiz board game.
Oh wow! Okay. So that's a great example of something that would get next by the network. Some behind the scenes for you, because that show is on, though with the same man.
Yeah.
It's on a different network. To be honest, they probably would let it through, but you'd have to you'd have some raised eyebrows at the very least, I think.
And then if they did and if I didn't have a good argument to say to the producers, no, I do want it, what I would do is I would Google replicas of Gleb Davis's head, because I found them online. You can buy mini versions that someone's made. So I'd just bring that in and just say, no, you're not beautiful and all. If Greg Davis is beautiful, just annoy him.
That's good. That'd go down great, I think.
Yeah. And so Daniela Walker, who was fantastic in this episode / the entire series, brought in a fishing shirt, which she converted into a dress and in a corset, back and blazer to it. Was that high? Did that look high quality? Because from what I saw, it looked like it had been made really cheaply.
No, it looks high quality to me. It looks kind of high quality for its use, which is like a fishing vibe shirt, breathable, but a bit polyestery and fun. Yeah, I really love that prize.
And then we had Jimmy Reese. Now, because I know him very slight, because since watching this version, and I'm now seeing him online more. But is he an online comedian, or is he a well-known face to TV viewers in Australia?
So he was on, without knowing all the details of his career, I think he was on a children's program called Giggle and Hoot for years, which was very popular, and has subsequently gotten into doing comedy on social media, and is very, very popular on social media. And so I think, the people who watch TV and watch social media, they're the same people. So I think, a lot of people would have been familiar with him.
And speaking of children's shows, I'll just mention this quickly before we move on. But I don't know if you know this, but Play School, so your version of Play School, not the UK original, but Play School Australia is the second longest running children's show in the entire world.
I didn't know that Play School wasn't an Australian original. No, this is my childhood.
Right, so
you're telling me we ripped it off the UK as well. This is...
So it started in the UK. There's a New Zealand version and there's a Canadian version.
Is Big Ted in the UK version?
Yeah. So the UK version lasted, I think, about, I'm gonna say roughly about 2 decades. I don't know for a definite, because it started in the 60s.
Nothing. That's nothing.
And I know, and then Blue Peter is the world's longest running children's show, which is I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's basically a load of presenters get given challenges like hop out of a helicopter or bungee jump from Mount Everest or hang off the top of a plane, and then you have to.
Sounds a bit like Extreme Taskmaster.
The plane has to spin over, and you have to pass the baton to the other presenter that's on the other plane underneath you. And then they have dogs on. You can win badges. So you apply for difficult badges. So the original silver, and then if you're the queen, or if you've saved someone's life, you get a gold Blue Peter badge. So very few people have got them, but the king and the queen have both got it respectively.
Wow.
Yeah. So Play School is the Australian version is the second world's most like it's been going on so long. It looks like a Guinness World Record, because Blue Peter is nearly 70 years old.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And sounds much more difficult to make than Play School. So good on them.
Well, Blue Peter's here it used to be every Thursday. When I was younger, it used to be every Thursday. Now it's every Friday. Sometimes it's pre-recorded, sometimes it's live. But it's like months, years. We've had 43 presenters overall.
Wow.
And it is like every child as in the UK has at least seen or heard of the show, and it's probably the same with Play. But
definitely.
So was Jimmy Reese's children's show as beloved as Play School?
I wouldn't say that, no. Play schools. I mean, to be honest, I don't know because I'm not a child anymore, so I don't keep up with the one of the most popular children's shows. But it was pretty. I'd heard of it, and I don't have kids, so I think that's a good sign of that it was popular.
Yeah. And so Jimmy brought in a tweet he saw where the poster had expressed that their preference would have been for Kissy Flanagan, or Flanagan, or however you pronounce her last name, because I've butchered that to no end. Because
Flanagan, yeah.
as the Australian comedian, actor, and writer, for anyone that didn't know, to be the Taskmaster on the Australian version. Now, had you seen the rumours, not rumours, but people's opinions of who they wanted to be in it? Had you seen that before you had been told you were going to be the assistant?
I can't quite remember, but I think the timeline of, I think when it was announced it was happening, it was announced that me and Tom Gleeson were in it. So I don't think there was a period where it was announced that it was coming out before the who was in it was announced, where people could speculate. But I could be wrong. But if that period did exist and there was speculation, then clearly I didn't find it that stressful because I don't remember it. But Kitty Flanagan would have was a good pick because she's a fantastic comedian and kind of also, I suppose, has her vibe is a bit high status. Yeah. So both her and Tom Gleeson, a lot of their jokes are not at their own expense, and which would have made her well placed. As I think the Taskmaster said in this episode later on when he was giving out the points.
And so when people had been not rumored, but people have opinions on who they want as Taskmasters, and they're all saying at one point, and it was very, very brief, like for a week or so, they wanted Adam Hills to be the Taskmaster because what they want is Taskmaster fans want Adam Hills on Taskmaster, no matter which version. He just wants.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Will he do it? Do you think?
I don't know because he does spend his time a lot in the UK and Australia because he does Spicks and Specs in Australia, and he does the last leg in the UK. So I don't think he's gonna, because he also does rugby league and he's also a writer now comedian. So I don't think he's got time. I think he's so busy he hasn't got time to.
I don't buy that. He's got time. He's got some other ulterior motive. We need to get to the bottom of this and get him on season 17 or something, I reckon.
Well, he might have time after the budget cuts for the last leg. They've lost 2 episodes.
Really?
Yeah, so Channel 4 have cancelled shows left, right, and centre. And
right, there we go.
2 episodes from this series and the next series because it's to cut expenses.
Wow, okay. Well, there we go.
And then Julia Morris, who, for anyone that doesn't know, has appeared on one of the early series of Celebrity Australia Apprentice, not the versions that are available in the UK. I know that because in the UK we've got the Ross Noble series and the most recent series currently in the UK for the Celebrity Australia Apprentice. So it's we've got the Lord Sugar era to make it more clearer because I don't know who did it beforehand, but that's besides the point. So she had brought in a coffee mug on which she had printed a photo of Tom Gleeson at a much younger age. And so was it an actual photo of him? Because sometimes it could be Photoshop.
This is a great question, and I thought the same thing when I watched this episode earlier today. I was squinting. I'm like, is that real? And I have no idea. I'm sorry to say.
And so with
it looked photoshopped to me.
It did to me as well.
Just gotta say that.
I had heard a story from Jack Bernhardt, if I'm pronouncing the last name correct, because I'm trying to. Because you're on Taskmaster People podcast, and he mentioned about you meeting Tom Gleeson for the first time. So when you first met him, before you did Taskmaster, when you met him in the comedy Wild, were you starstruck when you met him, or did you have a level head and know what you wanted to ask him in the moment?
I was, so I don't remember it that well, but I was definitely starstruck because have you seen, because you seem to be across a lot of Australian shows. I wouldn't usually ask someone from the UK this, but have you seen Skit House?
No.
So he was, maybe when I was like 12 or 13, he was in a sketch show called Skit House, which was on, I think, Channel 10, same channel. And at least in my milieu, this was a very popular show. And he was a standout, I think. And I've been, I suppose, a fan of him ever since. And I had seen him live a bunch of times with my family and stuff when I was, a teenager. So yeah, when I first met him, I was definitely starstruck. But then my memory of the conversation we had when I first met him was he was just very kind of relaxed and just wanted to talk about comedy and stuff, and kind of made it all seem very normal, which made the nerves go away, which was nice.
And so when you met him again to film this, obviously, I know the story of him not remembering you met him at all, which I just think is absolutely hilarious. But did you feel more relaxed because you met him once? You had remembered meeting him once before. Did you feel more relaxed being around him because I wouldn't say he's like a mega name, but he's like well known enough for people to go, oh, it's him, oh.
Totally. I think, I felt a bit more relaxed because I had a sense that he was a nice guy. And also, I suppose, I've got a bunch of friends who've worked with him, I suppose. So you just hear that he's a nice guy. So I suppose that puts you at ease.
And that's always good because he does, when you watch him on Hard Quiz, which most of the available episodes are available on YouTube for any people out there, he always seems like to me, when you watch Hard Quiz, before you knew he was the Taskmaster, you would think that he's auditioning to be the Taskmaster watching Hard Quiz, because he is.
Totally.
Because when he did the celebrity special, there wasn't a celebrity special because he was trying to make it clear that none of them were celebrities. He was like really mean to them, and then you watch this again and you think that is identical because he was upsetting these non-celebrity celebrities and
yes,
comedians all at the same time.
Totally. No, I think he was very well placed for it.
So now we move on to task number 1. The first task was to remove the balloon from the caravan. Now, to cut a long story short, because we haven't got all the time in the world, is most of them, let's say 3 of them, got disqualified for actually touching the caravan because let's say Luke was not the smartest tool in the caravan, shall we say?
No.
And is he normally like this? Is this just his normal persona?
Oh yeah, I mean, what he's like on the show is very much what he's like in real life, for sure.
And so the only people that actually won any points was Daniela Walker and Nina Omiyama, if I've pronounced the last name correctly.
I think it's Oyama.
Oyama, that's it. So Daniela did it in 5 minutes and 18 seconds, and Nina did it in 3 minutes and 18 seconds. So task number 2: create a 1-minute montage of your life. The best looking montage wins in 45 minutes. Now, I don't think, and it was already decided from the get-go, that Julia did a montage of her life at all, because even though it looked like a montage, she didn't act it out. She just got a lot of images, shoved it into iMovie, and let iMovie do the magic.
Yes. But you don't think that counts? It didn't say that you have to act it out.
Well, it didn't, but everyone else did, so I just assumed she would have more common sense and not take the lazy route.
But then she didn't know what others had done.
Oh, yeah, that is a good point, because we all...
I mean, I agree with you that it was a very strange offering.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the ones. So there were a few tasks throughout this season where I just lost the plot and couldn't stop laughing. And that was one. That was like, I think maybe on the last day of filming, potentially the second last day. So, you're a bit more tired than you were at the beginning. But then also, I think I might have said this on the People's Podcast as well, but there was a bit that was cut out of Julia's montage that just made me laugh so much. It was just all these photos of her in various locations, slowly, vaguely in age order. You know, they started out pretty young and then she's getting older. And then out of nowhere, there was just this photo of a big mouse, like a big blue mouse. Oh, and then it went back to her. And then after like a few more of her, I'm like, what was that mouse? Like, why was there a mouse there? And I had no idea. I just started laughing because she'd accidentally put like a mouse in her montage. But what it ended up being is that she had apparently been a contestant on Masked Singer Australia and dressed up as that mouse. But I hadn't watched that, so I didn't know what it was. So I just thought she'd accidentally put a mouse. And yeah, something about that really titillated me. So I quite liked it for that reason. But I also did find it a bit more stressful than the others because the others, they have a bit of a plan for how to act it out. And then, you know, they tell you what to do. Whereas this was just all her singing, looking at her phone and then looking at me for a reaction. And I didn't know what reaction to give. Like, yep, nope, there's another photo of you.
Then we had, I'm going to say this word, but I don't mean it personally if you are watching Luke. We had hapless Luke making up this whole thing about him dying. The best bit for me was that because I've interviewed Tom Furness, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, because I've interviewed...
Yeah, that's right.
And I know he's mentioned me to other people in the past, which is quite a weird thing to happen. He's in it because I appreciate that he's there. I like how they're in. I still think that he's like, because no one can act out the death unless he had his funeral planned out years in advance.
Well, you say hapless. You describe Luke as hapless, and I wouldn't disagree with you. However, who won this task?
It was obviously Luke. So, I mean, we'll give it to him. And then we had Nina. She did it all in black and white, which the cinematography on it was brilliant. Not Steven Spielberg level, but for a Taskmaster program, it was really good. And briefly to mention, in shorter terms, we had Daniela Walker. Looked like she needed to not do the program anymore because she had sort of lost it a little bit. To be nice about it, and looked like she had sort of lost it slightly.
My favourite bit of Nina's was that she was on a talk show. I think Tom Gleeson said this, but on a talk show promoting that she'd read a book. Like she'd read a book about space, and then now she was going to space. Most people, they go on a Tonight Show to promote if they've written a book in order to sell it. But this was just like going on Jay Leno and saying, you know, I read the latest Harry Potter. I thought it was awesome.
Well, it sounds like something Elon Musk would do. Read a book about space and go into space.
Yes.
Yeah. And so task 3, fill the glass with orange juice.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a simple thing. Don't use your hands. So it says we use the objects on the symbol. Don't use your hands. See, I don't know how many times you could say it, but Daniela Walker, in the genius she is, says, oh, there's these items. What I'll do is I'll get my hands and use my hands. And then, obviously, get disqualified, even though it made it very clear. It didn't say the word, you can't use your hands, but it made it clear not to use your hands.
It's one of my favourite things about this show is, and to be honest, I would reiterate what I said before about the stress that these contestants are under, because I think it is quite a relevant factor when people are often marveling at how stupid a decision they make is. I think the answer is often a combination of stress and then often them fixating on some other part of the task, which is what Luke did in the first task where he saw that you can't step in. And so then he's like, oh, I'm a genius. I'm going to not step. I'm going to sit, but then ignored the other stuff. And similarly, I think Danielle got fixated on, or just didn't focus on the right bit. And so is trying to look for an exception in order to feel like, aha, but, you know, in doing so, just fails. That was one of the, I suppose, probably the most difficult to keep it together spot of filming season 1, because I knew it was really important too. because if I give away that I find this very funny, then she'll be clued into the mistake that she's made, and I shouldn't be changing the outcome like that.
Yeah.
Like when it's obvious why there's something funny, then I think that it's more okay if they see that I'm enjoying myself. But yeah, if it's going to clue them into a mistake they've made, then it's not. And if you remember, she asked me to read the task.
Yeah.
That was the real struggle. I'm like, I'm going to have to get through this completely straight-faced. And very proud of myself that I managed it.
And so, the one question I've got that add-ons, you keep mentioning Croc. Is it because the brand in Australia is called Croc, or is it because it's a singular Croc? Because I would call them Crocs. So is it the brand's called Croc, or is it the fact that there's a singular Croc?
I think it's the second one. I think it's the fact that it's a singular Croc. Because you have two Crocs, one Croc, surely.
I would call them Crocs, not Croc.
But what if there's one?
Well, yeah. Well,
There's one
yeah,
Croc.
It also sounds like I'm trying to imitate Steve Irwin.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you become if you lose your Crocs. A croc hunter.
And obviously his son was recently on Celebrity Gogglebox Australia.
Oh yeah.
Just to put a tidbit in there. And so we had Jimmy. He used a croc, and then used a toothbrush to scoop in all the leftovers. We had Julia. She ran to the she did what someone that's seen Taskmaster before would do, and just ran to the fridge and got the orange juice. Was that put in there deliberately? Do you know?
We were aware that was we were aware that was a hack that someone could use, but it was also put there for us to enjoy drinking orange juice.
Oh, so it wasn't there put there just because you were setting up the task, which is even better. And then she decided to play the recorder because she felt like it.
Yeah,
she was very competent at it. Because I have heard bad recorder playing, me including. Then we had Luke.
I think. Sorry if I can interrupt. I think Julia was often the most successful because she was trying to be. I think she'd be okay with me saying this. Trying to cut corners out of laziness, basically. So, to the extent that she found clever exceptions, it was to save her and the crew time. And this was a fantastic example of that. I reckon she just looked at the big barbell or whatever and thought, no. What's an exception that I can utilize here?
And to me, she seemed to have the I've got better things to be doing at home type attitude. She wants to get in and get home.
That's it.
Yeah. Which is a good attitude to have. Then we had hapless Luke. Not so hapless, but Luke the staring while scooching into a caravan McGregor. He used a jar, and then towards the end, it is something that Jenny Eclair has done in the most recent series. So Jenny Eclair sat on a box to stop some jelly from breaking jelly, and what Luke did was he sat in the bucket.
Yes,
saved the job. And then we had Nina. She started using a weight and gave up and poked it with. Was it a pencil that you used? Because I thought it was a pencil, but I'm having second thought.
I think she poked it with with the toothbrush.
That's it. Because it looked like a pencil from my eyes, but that might be because I was looking in it with my eyes and not her eyes.
And maybe it's because you were holding a pencil halfway between the screen and you.
Oh yeah. Oh.
There we go. That could have been the culprit right there.
It could have been. And so then we have the live and the final task of the episode. Throw, boot, ball, flick. So the item, you have to bowl a ball, flick a flick, and boot a boot. And so that's another good example of how live tasks should work. They don't do it, they get out, and then you have a winner. That's how live tasks should work, and that's what the Australian version does perfectly. You can have an amazing first episode with a live task. If you mess it up there, then no one's going to watch it. But because it's done perfectly, then it's a congratulations, round of applause type moment.
Right. So when you say one person gets out each round, what do you mean in opposition to what? What's the style that you don't like?
So I'm not saying I don't like it. It's just when you have a live task,
Yeah.
you always have some task where it's like whoever wins is the last person left. So you have the one where you have to build a model within 90 seconds.
Yes.
That's a really good task. But then the ones that also work really well are the ones where it's like it's in stages, so you've got more suspense because you're not like
Totally.
and you find a winner. You sort of watching it unfold, and you're watching how it's changing ever so slightly.
As opposed, they're all doing it for 2 minutes, and whoever builds the tallest tower after 2 minutes wins. I think I agree with you. I think I agree that the ones that kind of go in rounds like that, the suspense builds, and it's kind of more obvious what's going on. Yeah, I think I agree.
And so the episode winner was Daniela Walker. Well done. And before I round off this episode, I'd like to say that not every version has prize tasks. So some versions don't work when they don't have prize tasks. That's why the New Zealand and Australian versions are on par to the UK version, because it's not a direct. It is a direct translation, but with every other version, they use tasks from the UK version, and Australia and New Zealand.
Do they?
Yeah, are the first version that have solely original tasks. So much so, in the UK version, Alex Horner's adapted some of the New Zealand tasks to make them slightly more complicated for the UK.
Yeah, and what do you think about this? Because I've watched the latest season of Taskmaster UK, loved it. I think there was a live task that was adapted from an Australian one. Can you think what?
Oh, what's that? I remember. No, go on, tell me. I can't.
I mean, I could be wrong. I don't have any inside information. But in the last episode, weren't they standing behind a board, and they had to say whether they were standing in the water or not standing in the water?
Yeah.
And in the Australian one, we had a standing on a trampoline or not standing on a trampoline.
Oh yeah.
So I reckon, who knows? Could be independent thought, but I think I'm chalking that up to Australia has inspired one in the original.
I think it's because Alex on involved slightly in every version. He's there, somewhere. Because there's an image online where the Portugal Taskmaster is in a meeting room in Portugal, and he's on Zoom in London.
Yes,
he's
right.
Tried to get it because they're doing an Italian version, but he's only ever mentioned it once on one podcast, and so he's always he's like a shadow for everyone. Yeah, he's like the guardian angel. Yeah, you can just hear him whispering in your ear. And so, on that spooky note, I'd like to say...
It was extremely spooky.
Yes, I'd like to say thank you to Tom Cashman. And if Tom Gleeson is watching this, please let me interview you to fill the hole of so I've got the full collection. It's like Pokemon. I want to catch them all. Rather than catching, I want to interview you all and one day become friends with all of them, included David Sundin. I want to be friends with Paul Williams, Tom Cashman, and David Sundin at the same time. One day, the dream will come true. But until then, we will just enjoy interviewing them from the comfort of this wonderful YouTube channel. Now, before we end, the end card you're about to see is brand new. What I mean by brand new is I've AI'd Alex's audio, and I've added a new visual image because there was bits that I had learned more techniques to improve. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Well, thank you for letting me interview you.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for watching. And remember, sorry about this, Strictly, but I don't care. Remember, keep tasking. Bye.
Hello, everyone. Please subscribe to Taskmaster World.